Seches Bava Kama, Daf Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Beis. Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Beis. We are about 8 or so lines from the beginning of the wide lines. The line starts with the word Kuti, Shakil Dami, Solo Shakil Dami, and then we have Gufa. Yeah, very goofy. We are learning Lil Nishmas of Imorim Menachem Ben Akiva, Lil Nishmas Ruth Bas Sholem, Lil Nishmas Sol Bas Moshe, Lefuas Estofuma Bas Shoshana Malka, Lefuas Estofuma Bas Gitl. That's what I thought. Besoich Shor Chol Yisrael. And you this Basich for Besoich Shor Chol Yisrael. Gufa Omer Shmuel. Gufa means we are now focusing on something that was a lateral thing before. Now it's a major thing. We're now focusing on Omer Shmuel. Shmuel's statement. Dina DeMalchusa Dina. Dina Malchusa Dina. What does that mean? The law of the Malchus, the law of the government, halachically is really called the law. Halachically, it's also the law. What does that mean? It does not mean that anything that the government decides is actually the law. It means to say, from the context we've seen so far, that anything that the government decides, monetarily speaking, if they take taxes, those taxes are considered to be illegal and they're not a theft. If the king decides that he raises the taxes all of a sudden, and he's taking X amount of money from each person, maybe that's a theft. Maybe as a Jew, I'm not supposed to be a tax collector. Or maybe I'm allowed to steal from the tax collector, because anyhow, the whole thing is stolen, right? So we say no, we say Dina DeMalchusa Dina. So you said the reason about Dina DeMalchusa, and I said the reason. Really, there are 7 different reasons I've seen about why Dina DeMalchusa Dina. One reason is the Rashbam. Rashbam of Basra says that since we assume most people are interested in the taxes, as much as we, grant and complain about them, we do have roads, we do have trees in the park, and we do have a healthcare system, so assuming most people are interested in the tax system, Memela, that's like a roiv. The roiv decided, most people decided that that's going to work. Another reason that you guys were saying, that's brought down, I think, in the Even Ezel. The other reason is because you people were saying, and it's true, the Malchus, generally speaking, is a good thing. Without a Malchus, without the government, there would be chaos. And some people, the government is the chaos. But generally speaking, with no government, Ish Yisrael Chai Blo. Yeah, we're all celebrating. So then basically the government is a good thing because they take care of law and order, and therefore they need the taxes and it's accepted. And the third reason is because I don't remember who says that, another Rishon, he says the king owns the land. The king owns the land. Because he's the owner of the land, therefore he can do whatever he wants, and he can take money from one person, give to the other one, can take your money and give it, he can uproot your tree and then replant it in the park because he thinks that's for the good of the public, because he be'etzem owns the entire land. Okay? That's not in Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael, of the way it's supposed to be, that each shevet, each tribe got their own nachla, they got their own share, then the king is not the owner, right? Because each shevet is the owner of themselves. That's what the in Eretz Yisrael, the importance of nachla, of inheritance. Each person has inheritance. Go for Mishmul. Dina DeMalchusa Dina, what? Inherited the land, and he's the owner of his own land. Dina DeMalchusa Dina. So now, and another point is Malchus and not Melech. If the Melech takes taxes because he wants to fly 10 times a year to Dubai, and he takes taxes for that because for his own pleasure, for his own thing, that's not called proper taxing. And halachically, it's not recognized. That puts in question lots of things that happens in this country, and maybe other countries too, when the government does things that nobody wants. So that's a question here. Rava comes to prove Shmuel right. Teda, I'll prove to you that Shmuel is right. Why? The Katli Dikli. Look, the government, what do? They uproot, they cut off, they sever, they cut off people's personal palm trees. The Gashri Gishri, the bridges, which means they build bridges from the people's actual palm trees. And Rashi says they don't even change them as much. They stay more or less the same. The shape of the log of wood stays the same. And all of us, even the big Talmidei Chachamim, we all use the trees, which means we all cross the bridges. We pass, we step, we tread on the bridges that actually belong to other people. And we said in the Mishnah, you're not allowed to use the stolen property of another person, right? And here we do. Must be, says Rove, it's not called stolen. It's not called a theft. Why? Because whatever the government does is not a theft. That's Rove's proof from Ma'aser Rav. If Talmidei Chachamim do it, must be the right thing. Abai is challenging Rov and says, how do you know that it's because it's not called a theft? Because the king's theft is not theft, but is legal. But Dilma, maybe Mishum de Ayush Lahu Minayu Marayu. Maybe it's because the owners of those trees are miyash from them. They're already miyash. That's why. In other words, since there was yush from getting it back, the owners of the trees, they actually realized they will never get it back. Because there was yush, that's why I can step on it, which means it is theft. Maybe really the law of the king is not the law. And really it's theft. But this is theft past yush. After the person was miyash, you can now use it because it's post yush. There was gzela and there was yush. Gzela and yush, then you can do whatever you want. Omar le says Rove, no, Rove replies, ma pitom. And now there are two explanations here, Rashi and Tosfos. I'm starting with Rashi and then Tosfos. Omar le, Iloi Dina DeMalchusa Dina, eichimiyashi. If not for Dina DeMalchusa Dina, if not for my reason, says Rove, that it's not a theft at all, because it's Dina DeMalchusa Dina, how come Yush would make a difference, right? Which means, really, Yush only helps Yush in Shinui Reshus. Here, there was no Shinui Reshus. Remember, in order for the item to be kosher, to be through the laundry of Halacha, so to speak, there has to be a kinyan, Yush, and Shinui Reshus. There's no Shinui Reshus. It's by the public. Nobody got it. It still belongs to the government, right? That's how we understand that. And that's the reason, right? Mimela must be the system of yes gzela and yush v'shinui reshus doesn't work. There's no shinui reshus. Must be what? It's not a gzela at all, says Rove. There is no gzela whatsoever. There's no gzela. Why is there no gzela? Because it's the law of the government, law and order. That's Rashi. Tosfos says differently. Tosfos argues, and Tosfos, in the last dibur, he says something else. He says, listen to the words of the Gemara. Iloi Dina DeMalchusa Dina, if not for the fact that the government law is the law, why would there be miyash? How did you decide that they're miyash? Miyashi. In other words, who told you that they're miyash? Why? Because who wants to deal with the government? Ashkoich, that's in the Malchusa Dina. How do you know the Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda and Jackie? How do you know that if their palm trees were taken for them, they're miyash? Who told you that, Abaye? Who told you they're miyash? You spoke to them. You know they're miyash. I know they're miyash also. You know why? Because they're Malchusa Dina. Because they can't take anybody to court. Nobody can take the king to court because the king is right. Because he's right. Because Taki and Chanami, Malchusa Dina. That's exactly the reason. That's what Tosfos says. Now, Frag the Gemara, and by the way, the Rambam learns, according to the Bach, that there was Shinui Reshus. Why? You gave it to the public, and the public is a Reshus. That's a third Shita. You get what I'm saying? The Rambam, the Rabbim is the domain called, there's an authority called the people. The government took it from Reuven, Levi, Shimon, and gave it to someone called the public in the park. There's a nice bridge. Baruch Hashem, you mechaven to the Bach. Very nice. Frag the Gemara, another question now. V'haloi ka'avdi k'domar malka. It's very nice to say we are in the middle of the wide lines in Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Beis. Yeah, the line starts with Dina, that's the one. Frag the Gemara, v'lo ka'avdi k'domar malka. You're telling me what? What did we just say? If the government cuts off people's trees, and what does it do with them? Builds bridges with those trees, with pieces with the planks of wood, then it's okay to use because Dina Malchusa Dina, the law of the government is the law, and they decided to take it from Reuven and give it to the public. Those messengers of the king, and they go to people's gardens and they cut off the palm trees in the fields, they don't really follow the king's orders. They're not really doing what the king told them to do. Why? Malka Omar, the king said, Zilu v'kotlu mikol bagi. The king said, go, and kotlu, and actually cut off, kill. Kotlu is to kill, which means to cut off from all the different fields. Bagi is like the plain, it's a field, Bekitzer. He says, take it from each and every field fairly. He said, I want 100. The king has a quota. I want 100 trees. 100 trees from who? Well, make it fair. We need 100 trees for refurbishing and rebuilding beautiful bridges in our city, says the good king. So 100 fields, I want 2 from each field, let's say. He says each field should force to donate X amount of trees. The Inu and those collectors that go around and cut off the trees, the Inu azlu v'kadlu michad baga. They go and they just take a korban. They katlu. I don't mean the korban literally. Yeah? They go and they take from one baga only. They go and they take from one. All 100. What's the names? All 100 trees. They just go because they're lazy. They're lazy to go to each and every field. 100 trees. They go to one guy. They catch him as a scapegoat, and from him they cut all 100 trees. So if they don't act on behalf of the king the way the king told them, they're not Dina DeMalchusa. What are they? They're stamp thugs, like we said before. They're like an illegal kind of tax person because they're not supposed to take from one person everything else, everyone else's, right? Okay, they're lazy. Take 100 trees. If they chapped one guy, 100 trees all from him. Answers the Gemara very posh to answer. Conceptually, first of all, the shliach of the melech is like the melech, which means the shliach of the melech does have the authority like the melech, even if he doesn't follow the king's instructions down to the T. In general, the king gives him leeway to do, as long as he gives 100 trees, then although the king preferred that he should have gone to each and every person, the loy torach, line starts with torach, the loy torach, which means that guy is lazy, but he's legally lazy. The king said like this, I want 100 trees. Well, preferably from what? From many different fields, makes more sense. Loy torach, ein olav litorach v'likad mezeh. Yeah? In other words, he's not mechuyev to actually torach and take 2 trees from here, 2 trees from there, 2 trees from there. No. Hi, l'chor, you would scream to me, it's unfair. It's unfair. Why? Because at the end of the day, it took 100 trees from one guy, and his tree left bare, and everyone else has their trees. The inu afsid nafshayu, the owner of the field of the trees, caused himself a loss. Why did he cause himself a loss? The bailu the inkut mikule bagi umishkal dami. What he should have done, the owner of the field where all 100 trees were taken from, inkut mikule bagi, he should have gone to all the different fields around him, umishkal dami, and take money and take them to court and take money from them. Let's summarize. We're talking here about people whom the king ideally would like them to take. It's a fair king. He wants to build nice bridges for his population, for a city, and he says, go and get me 100 trees. Obviously, it's better to get 100 trees in an even way, in a fair way. Those people are lazy bums, and they take all from one field. So although they're not nice, but you can't say it's not Dina DeMalchusa. They generally do follow what the king told them to do. Elamai, they did it in a lopsided way. Okay, that's wrong, but it's not gzela from the person. The person done it, you should have taken from the other tree owners. And you can file a complaint very easily to the government and tell the king, listen, Mr. King, yeah, George the 15th, yeah, I want you to know that all my neighbors were not paying and I was the only one paying for them. I paid my neighbors' taxes, and the king very nicely would give you money, or they should give you money, but in court, you would be right. The other field owners, would give you money to compensate you, and then you'll get the other 98 trees, you'll replant them because you'll go to your neighbors. So be'etzem, taking 100 trees and build them into bridges is okay. The internal story between the guy that was taking too much and his neighbors were saved, that's between them. This guy can go to his neighbors and legally can go there with the police. He can go with it and say, listen, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, I really paid your taxes, pay me back, and he'd be right. Mimel, it's not called theft. It's lopsided, but it's not called theft at all, and it's still under Dina DeMalchusa Dina. Yeah. Okay, you're asking a good question. You're not allowed to cut fruit-bearing trees, and the answer is not so simple, because you are mi'ikar din allowed to cut fruit-bearing trees if the wood is worth more than the fruit. If the fruit-bearing, but the fruit is really very shvach, very weak in quantity or quality or both, then and the wood is worth more, I don't recommend to do it, because they say to touch a fruit-bearing tree is very dangerous halachically, it can bring a death and it can bring bad things. But lamaisa me'ikar din, if you want to go by the Litvish letter of the law, then if really the dates are nothing to write home about, and the trunk is a stark, a good trunk, you can build the Brooklyn Bridge #2 with that, so that you are allowed to cut the tree. Make your din, and that's Tosfos in Brochus, Daf Lamed Vav Amud Beis. Yeah, how come I know it so well? Because I learned it yesterday. Weiter. Yeah, okay. Omarove. Oh, now comes another case about paying taxes in a way that seems unfair. One person paying for his friends. Man de mishtakach bebei dari, which means the story is as follows. Rashi says, let's say there are four, I don't know what Rashi says four. Rashi says there were four partners in a field, okay? And they all use the same granary. And they all work in the granary, yeah? Now, three of them already took their grains home. And the fourth partner, remember, he's the partner in the field. He's still left in the granary. He's the last one to be left alone, working, and working with his wheat. And then he's about to leave and go home. Knock on the door of the granary, the police, da-da-da-da. What do they want? Three things: kesef, money, and guilt. And in this case, they want the grains, they want the wheat. Now they know that field is a big field, a few acres, yeah, and they think of the entire amount that the field actually yielded, and they take everything from him. They take his partner's part from him because the other ones already went home. He is the last one left behind with, baby in the hands, like left behind, like the yachts, like Shlemazel, and the police caught him. So now, what do we say? Dina DeMalchusa. So now, basically, he paid for everybody else's part. What does he have to do now? Because his partner with them in the field was his bad luck that he was left alone and caught by the tax collectors. Then what? His partners would have to compensate him. You understand what's going on here? In other words, from his quarter, a very large amount was taken. From his 25%, they took whichever amount of tax they take from 100%. He should go to his, not neighbors, to his partners and knock on their doors and say, listen, guys, I was paying your tax and we're really all in one boat because we're all partners. Now continue. Rashi also says that those collectors are not thieves. The fact they took too much from him, that's not called theft. Why? Because Lamaisa, they took from the field. Again, it's like the story with the trees. They did it in a lopsided way. They took too much from one corner, not from the other corner, so to speak. But at the end of the day, it's a business between him and his partners. But they do have the right, the government, to take, 18.5% from the 25 as if it was 100. And the rest, he should sort it out with his friends. The honeymoon, that is only true shutfa. When we talk about what a partner really has to do with the other three parts. So he paid for them and will be compensated for them. Aval arisa, let's say that fourth guy was not a partner in the field, he was an aris, which I think is called in English sharecropper, which means it's a person, begadol, who's called what? He works on percentage. Yeah, he works in the field, and then he gets his sharecropper. He gets a share, he gets from the field, whatever he worked, he gets what? He gets half, third quarter, he gets achuzim, quarters, percentage. So now, the aris is not a partner in the field. So let's say there are three real partners, and then there are aris. And let's say all three people went home, bye-bye, they all went home. The aris is left behind, stuck, baby in hands, and the tax collectors came, and they took everything from the aris, and he told them, guys, I'm an aris. The field is not mine. You're taking from my arisus things that are not mine, but belong to the field owners. Then the government is wrong, and the government are thieves. Arisusi, says the Gemara, Arisusi the Kamapi. What he takes out of the ground has nothing to do with the partners. Why? The partners are partners in the field. The Aris is in a completely different level, a completely different autonomy he has over here. The Aris part has nothing to do with the field. And Mimela, if the government insists and take from the Aris something that belongs to other people, something that they should have taken from other people. What do you mean other people? Reuben, Shimon, and Levi are owners of the field. Yehuda, the Aris, is not an owner of the field. He has a different cheshbon. It's like you have four people sitting in an office. Three of them work for the rail company, and the fourth one is the renting there. He's nothing to do with them. Yeah. So I'm saying same thing over here. This person has nothing to do intrinsically with the partners. and therefore they will not pay him back. They'll say, we are different. We are owners, and you're an oris. That's not the same thing, even though it's the same field, but it's not the same kind of agreement. You're not a partner. You're a percentage guy, and the government are the thieves. Government are the thieves, and therefore what? And therefore, if you're Jewish, don't do that. If you work for the government as a Jewish person, don't be part of that. And also, it's called stolen. If they took from the oris, and then if they took from the oris, and the government now has a lot of grains, as tax, that is stolen goods. Now, the government is not always right. Imagine yourselves, yeah. And therefore, there too, we say that. We say what? We say that you should not buy off those grains that the government stole from the oris, because it took from him parts that have nothing to do with him. They took like from Reuven, the field of Shimon. V'amar comes Reuven now with a bigger chiddush. Wow. V'amar Barmate abarmate mi'avet. Unbelievable. Listen to this and don't think. Barmata means one denizen of the city on the other denizen, mi'avet. Mi'avet means you can take a collateral. What does that mean? So listen to this. The law of the government back then was, hopefully, don't tell our government about it. They shouldn't get ideas. But the government back then was normal for them to do the following. Let's say there are a few neighbors in the building or a few neighbors in the city. Yeah, they all live in the same city of wherever, of Bet Shemesh. And one person did not pay his annual arnona, yeah, or his monthly or bi-monthly arnona of he pays, I don't know, 600 shekels, yeah. So you know what they do? They go to the neighbor and they say, we're going to take your candlesticks, avot, ein, beis, vav, tes, we'll take a collateral, your candlesticks worth 600 shekels, cheap candlesticks. As long as Reuven doesn't pay, we'll collateralize Shimon. We want to put pressure on the whole community. Why? Don't look at me like that. Community responsibility. In other words, we look at everyone in town as the same. Says, by the way, there are three bodies involved here. Let's say the mayor is the one collecting the taxes from everybody. And the mayor says, I want 100,000 shekels, let's say by the end of the month from everybody. That's for me a general global thing. Reuven didn't pay. So Shimon should give me collateral, not a collateral, until Reuven pays, and then I'll give back Shimon his collateral. Arvus hadodis, kol Yisrael arevim zeh b'zeh, shvuas lametes amud aleph, kol Yisrael arevim zeh b'zeh. Okay, that you can maybe raise an eyebrow, but that's the law of the government. The government, they decided that what? Really, each one is a chloy in the other, communal, so one should give the avot, the collateral for the other. Now. Before we continue, you have to realize how the taxation system worked in the olden days. That should be my YouTube title. Taxation system in Old Babylonia. And the graphic art should be some kind of ancient Babylonian thing. Yeah. So then, listen to this. It took us time, Mechavrusa, not to figure out from Rashi. And actually, what I'm about to say now is the genius of Mechavrusa, not me. Basically, it worked like that. Let's call him the mayor, the governor, the local guy, yeah, or girl, yeah. They what? In our case, they take what? They take the tax of 100,000 from the city, and who did they give it to? The Mr. Melech. In other words, the mayor is not a big guy. The mayor is just a gabbai tzedakah, not tzedakah, gabbai mas, a tax gabbai, not a tzedakah. So now, Mr. Gabbai of the town, the king says to him, you better give me 100,000 from everybody, and it's your responsibility. If the people don't give you 100,000 because they lack, because they're poor, because they evade the taxes, that's not my problem, says the king. I want from you, Mr. Local Big Guy, the head guy, the Gabbai, yeah, you should give me 100,000 by the end of the year. And if not, like in all the nice Hasidic stories, right? If not, you can go to jail, you have to dance with the bear, you have to go through fire and water, through the barking dogs. All the Hasidic stories you heard, they're right here in front of you. Yeah, if you don't give the 100,000 to the big king who sits there in his fancy palace, yeah, so what do you say? Down with your head, out with your head, off with your head, off with your head. Thank you. Off with your head. Very nice. So now there are, so listen to this. There are the people in town owing money to the local guy. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, and Jackie, they owe the local tax collector, the head guy, and he owes the government, right? Now, the relationship between, as long as the government is not satisfied with 100,000, as long as their coffers are not full, whatever the governor does is Dina DeMalchusa Dina. He's really working on behalf of the government, right? Because the government's coffers were not yet filled. The bank account did not reach the top, fully charged like a computer or a phone, yeah, as long as there's no 100,000. So their dealings really are indirectly with the government. However, once the government already got their 100,000, let's say it's the end of the tax year, anybody starts shaking when they hear those words, yeah, end of tax year. And 2-3 weeks before the end of the year, Mr. Local Sheriff, Mr. Local Gabbai has to give 100,000 to the king, yeah, he does give it. Let's say not everyone yet paid. Not everyone yet paid in town to Mr. Local Gabbai, but he paid the king. Get me that story? That's not called Dina DeMalchusa Dina. You know why not? Because the king was paid. You, Mr. Local guy, local Gabbai, you have an issue, you have a hole in your pocket, but you're not Malchusa. The Melech is happy. The Melech says, 100,000, let's build 10 more bridges and let's build a building higher than Dubai. The king is happy. You are with a hole in your pocket because you didn't get from us everything you want to refill your hole from the 100,000 you gave him. You gave the king 100,000 and you got from us only 90,000. So we owe you 10,000. But that's personal between us and you. That's not called Dina DeMalchusa Dina. Let's continue now. Now that you heard that big introduction, now let's listen. The Hanimil, that is true. Now we said a very weird halacha, right? That I can collateralize Reuven because of Shimon's lack of payment. That only the king can say such a thing because that's in the laws of the government. The Hanimili, the Bula Ara, the tax over the land. Bula is kind of tax of the land. The Karga is per capita. Karga is a head tax. You want to live in this country, you have to pay tax, regardless of what you do. The high shata of this tax year, which means, let's say the king was not yet paid this year, and we all owe the big king in the back door, the real big guy over there, we all owe him money, then the king can do whatever he wants. And the Gabbai Tzedakah can even do those strange things of taking Reuven for Shimon, because that's the law of the government, and the government wasn't yet paid. The real king in the back office wasn't yet paid. Aval Shata the Cholif, let's say the tax year is over, which means what? That Mr. Local Gabbai paid the king all 100,000 in full, better. Then, Hoil the Ifayas Malka, since the king was appeased, the king is happy. The king is now sitting in his big Hasidic stories, never heard. He sits in his big, the Politz. He sits in his big palace, having his parties with Ivan and Stefan. He got all the money he needs for this year, all 100,000, maybe even more. Now, you have a problem. You have a problem what? You, Mr. Tax Collector, you didn't get from us. That's between you and us. That's not Dina DeMalchusa. Khalif. What's gone is gone. Now we have a new tax year. It's not about the year 1st of January, which, I don't like Goyish dates, but it's not the 1st of January. The fourth is that the 1st of January, he was paid the king in full. So now it's only between what? The collector and the simple people in the street. It's true. Now, we still owe him money. Why? Because Lamaisa Mechavrusa said a very genius thing. Lamaisa Misken, he did pay the king, and we are supposed to pay him as regular Choshen Mishpat. So Reuven, to pay him his tax, Reuven does owe him money from last year, even though the year's gone, or 2 years ago, 5 years ago, it's like an old debt. But to do that extra thing, if you listen to what I'm saying, it's a beautiful thing. The Choshen Mishpat, regular Reuven, Shimon, let's say they're all Jewish. Reuven, to pay Mr. Tax Collector, that's regular debt. Because Lamaise was created by Dina DeMalchusa, and there is a choiv on each person to pay that you owe, even if the year is over. Even if the year is over, why? Because Lamaise, the guy's a hole in your pocket because of you, so pay him. However, to go that extra mile and say the strange thing that Reuven's candlesticks have to be collaterals for Shimon, only the king can say that. Only the king can act upon that. And since the king was paid already last year, and now we're in the tax year 2023, that you don't have the right to do. Because that's not regular Choshen Mishpat. No normal Dayan would say that Reuven has to pay for Shimon. It's only the Malchus laws. So we can go with the Meshigas of the Malchus up to a point, as long as the Malach is the one missing in his pocket within the same tax year. But next tax year is a whole different business. Don't come to me with your stupid. Dina DeMalchusa, my wife okayed it, by the way. Dina DeMalchusa Dina. Don't go with your foolish Dina DeMalchusa Dina. Yeah, because Lamaisa, the king was paid already. It's between you and me. That's a different story. Says Rove, another halacha, not so much to do with the previous thing. I don't know so much what's the connection, to be honest with you. Let's see the next halacha. If you want to look for a good profession, something really nice, better than lawyer, doctor, you can have some animals. Yeah, buy some animals, maybe borrow from a friend, and get those animals to to do their toilet, to be excused in someone else's field. That you should train them to go to someone else's field. They would fertilize someone else's field. I won't go into graphic details how. Yeah, and that's what you do for your living. Yeah, it's called dairy. You want to change profession? That's very nice. No, you take your animal, the animal in someone else's field, beautiful manure, beautiful fertilization, and that's what you do. You know, a website. I will fertilize your field with the dung of my cow.com. Very nice. And he walks around with his animals everywhere. And if you pay him enough money, his animals will do the right thing in the right time and fertilize your field. Yalla, let's go for that. So now, Hani, the dari, those people who do that, they're called dari, b'toichatchum. Let's say those people, they imagine yourself a city with tchum. What's the tchum of the city? 2,000 amas, right? And there's an area further from the city outside the tchum. B'toichatchum, let's say his area of work, yeah, the area where he works, you know, he doesn't do service. His area of service is b'toichatchum. The fields just outside city, town, still b'toichatchum. Osr likach mehen. It's halacha of gzeila. You're not allowed to buy an animal from him. Why can't you buy an animal from him? Why not to buy an animal from him? You know why? My time, the Gemara says, my time, why? Mishum de me'arba chayuta demata ba'adayu. Sometimes the animal from town who belong to good Jewish people, they befriend the animal. I don't mean that they walk around together ba'adayu with his animals. His animals are in dangerous proximity to the city. In town, people that, again, town is not New York and not Los Angeles. Town is like a kibbutz. It's like a moshav, yeah? So the people who have their cows in the moshav, those cows many times go to just outside the tchum to visit a friend. And Mr. Dung producer is not a big tzaddik. And if he says a cow, the joint is hurt, he says, welcome, Bessie. And he does not give her back, which he should have. So because the animals sometimes mix in, his animals are not all his, because he lives too close to other people's animals in town, and he has big Yetzer Hara to get more soldiers on his team. And therefore, his animals are kilu considered a strafe, because you don't know if his animals are really his or not his. Maybe they came from a different place. However, chutz latchum, if his area of service is exclusively out of the tchum, which means from some reason he never goes near town, he only starts and finishes his work only in fields, he only services fields that are, let's say, 2,000 amas away from town, then mutar likach mehem, you're allowed to take from him. Why? Because there's a huge distance between town and where he is. So to say an animal went that far, ran all the way there and joined his herd, that's much, much less likely. And therefore we say you're allowed to buy animals from him. He's not a ganav, he's a guy who turns a blind eye in a Veda. So mimele, if he's far away enough, we're not concerned that the animal came from the wrong place. Amar Ravina, however, Ravina gives us an exception to the rule. Amar Ravina, if you see an area, according to the way Mechavrusa showed me, if it's an area where every once in a while you see the funny scene of the owner running after his cow or his sheep or his goat, yeah, and it seems like in that area the animals tend to run away far away, also, then even outside the tchum it's also, which means outside the tchum is also because in this area the animals seem to be more ADHD. There seems to be more like, running around everywhere. So Metzias shows us that they do run far. It makes a lot of sense that statistically speaking, some of his animals may come from town, even though it's far away. That's what goes on in that area, and we should be concerned about it. And you should not buy animals from him because the chances are that they're not really his. And you're buying what? You're buying stolen goods. And definitely should not buy stolen goods. Why, what, where, and who? That's a different story. But you should not buy things that are likely to be stolen. Either it's before Yush, that's for sure also, even after Yush. Why shouldn't I buy after Yush? You guys tell me, why not to buy after Yush? Tosa says it's famous that the guy is a liar, it's bizoyan, it's bizui, it's fast nicht, right? According to the Bach, you are creating a shinui. Yeah? If you made the shinui reshus, you are the one who created the final gzela. So it's true that once it's in your hands, it's mutter, but you're the one creating it. You made it mutter. You're the one who gave the last bleach in the bleach. Make it mutter, right? That itself is the laundering, I meant to say. You're doing kilo the money laundering, so that's also. And the chule, and it's also lifnei iver. I gave it into my chavrusa. It's lifnei iver. That sounds from the Rambam, but different case. Lifnei iver because you're supporting the ganev. You're giving. If the ganev wouldn't have anybody to buy, they would buy the stolen stuff from him. Then he wouldn't have stolen. Weiter. Yeah. Questions. Machid Rove. Rove announced, Ravuna, some people the Ravuna announced. What was the big announcement? The Salkin Le'ela, he spoke to people, either Amoraim or other people, anybody that goes up to Eretz Yisrael, but the Nachtin Latata, those who do Yerida, those who go down to Bavel, everybody should know the following halacha, that's to do the relationship between a Yid and a Goy. Hi Bar Yisrael, listen to the following case. There was a Jew, the Yodasa Adusa Lekuti, he knows of a testimony, which means he knows he could testify, he witnessed something that would be for the benefit of a Goy. Yeah, Chaim Yankel saw that, that Tim McKenzie really is right in a certain court case. And you know what the real shtoch is? That Tim McKenzie is right. You know why Tim McKenzie is right? Because Tim McKenzie lent money to Reuven, and Reuven doesn't want to pay Tim McKenzie. Reuven does not want to pay Tim McKenzie, and Tim McKenzie is taking him to court, surprisingly not to the Jewish court. Okay? And now Chaim Yankel is an aide. He saw that really Reuven did borrow money from Tim McKenzie, and Reuven is lying, saying that he did not borrow money from Tim. And Chaim Yankel, the Jew, knows that in this case, the guy is right. Now, Veloy Tovu Minei is the machlokes if you have the girsa. The question is, did McKenzie actually go and Tovea, did he actually say, hey, Yankel, you saw that Reuven borrowed from me, you come and be made for me in Beis Din, hey, Yankel. Yeah, did he actually say it or not is a question. Now, the Ozal, the Asid Lei, the Dina DeMalchusa, he did go, Reuven, not Reuven, Chaim Yankel, the Ed, let's call him the Ed. The aide went to Dina DeMalchusa, he went to the Goysha court, he went to what? The federal court, I don't know, whichever court, and Al Yisrael Chavrei, and he testified against his Jewish friend. He testified against the Jew for the Goy. We put him in Cherem, Shamta. My time. Why do we put him in Cherem? Says the Gemara, the Inu Mapki Mamoina, the Goyim, as opposed to Jews, they take out money. They no. What? Except, extract money, right? They extract money. They right. I looked for another word. They extract money. Apuma dechad. They accept the testimony of one aide, and by the testimony of one aide, they already take money from Reuven and give it to Tim, or from George to give it to Tim. Halachically, what the Goysha court does is wrong. So Lamaisi, you as an aide echad, if it was a Jewish court, wouldn't be able to be made as one aide. You can maybe only force him to do shvua, to take shvua, right? That's what one aide can do. And then the three judges over there, the one judge, Judge McKinley and Judge Juarez, what do? They by one aide already take money, extract money out of the hands of Reuven, and that itself is wrong. If you get a shamta, why? Because you called you like mazik your friend. You mazik your friend. It's like a groma, but you mazik your friend. And there's also an element here of a moisel. In other words, although you may say, of course, that's a fair thing to do. So what if it's a goy? Wait a second. You're one aid. One aid is, the Mishnah Berurah says again and again and again, one person speaking Lashon Hara, one aid, even in Beis Din, is just Lashon Hara. Unless you have Shvua. So he's speaking Lashon Hara stam in front of three Goysha judges, of all colors and shapes, and against Reuven, pro McKenzie, And that's just Lashon Hara, because halachically they're not supposed to extract money, right? The lo yamoron, and therefore you get a shamta. The lo yamoron lechad. That is only true if there was only one aid. Aval betrei loi. If there are two people, let's say there were two aidim who saw what? They really saw that Reuven borrowed money from Tim, and they saw that Reuven is lying, and really Tim is right. Then we don't put them in shamta. We don't put them in shamta. Taisa says that it doesn't say exactly that it's necessary to do that. It's not necessarily true to go to Beis Din and testify for the goy. Why? Because at the end of the day, don't forget yesterday, a mistake of a goy or money that the goy is supposed to get and he's not getting, we're not supposed to help him after to get. No, this goy is not a nice Tim McKenzie. He's an Avodah Zara. Tim McKenzie is going with an Eshes Ish, and he also killed someone. In other words, that's not the nice Bein Noach, yeah? That guy, we're not supposed to support him and make sure he gets his money. So Mimela, if it's two people working, at least the Goyish court happens to be like the Torah, because it's two Eidim, then the Seder. We can't put you in Cherem, because at the end of the day, the Seder, he only says to us, Ein Meshalem Ashechayev Loy. Okay, you put things straight, you put things in order, but you're not mechuyev to do it for sure. We're in North Korea now. We're in a country called North Korea, and at 10:25 we'll go back to Israel. That'll be so nice. The Chad Nami lo moron el Dina DeMalchusa. Yeah, I'm sorry. The Chad Nami, even if it's one aid, even one aid who is not supposed to be made, because what does one aid do in Beis Din, even of Goyim? Lo moron Dina DeMalchusa. Megista means a court of the lowly Goyim in town, in the small town. A small town court, I don't know how the lowest court is called in America, it's like ironi, something local. In that Beis Din, they accept one aid's edus, and by that they already expect the money. Aval Beit Davar, if it's the high court, it's Supreme Court. In Unami, they too, like the Jews, they behave like the Jews in the high court, in the Supreme Court. Chad, if it's only one aid, amum tashadulei. If it's one aid, all they do is make him take shvua, like we do. They learn from us, the choshev goyim, and they don't really expect money upon one aid. So if the goyim act like Jews mitzad the number of the aidim, and the goy is there, and by the way, some people say the goy wants you to go, then in chinami you're allowed to give edus to the goy and for the goy, and we're not going to put you in cherem. By the way, any bleeding hearts, it does say already in the Ravid that if Chilul Hashem is involved, then you should go and testify even by one aid, right? Because Chilul Hashem we always want to avoid. In other words, let's say everybody knows that Reuven behaves like a real scum, and all the media and everybody knows that Reuven is really cheating Tim, and they also know that there's a big rabbi, big kippah, who knows, and he's silently supporting the Reuven guy. Then he should testify against Reuven because it causes Chilul Hashem. Okay, I'm really sorry. Amar Ravashi, says Ravashi, Ki avina bei Rav Huna. When I was by Rav Huna, Ibailan, I had the following question: Adam Choshuv. Let's say there's an important person. Whatever important means, I don't know. But the samchi aleke beitrei. Let's say the goyim see you as an choshuv, a person. I don't know if they see the rabbi is choshuv, or is a top Jewish politician, or is a top Jewish baseball player. I don't know if they see as choshuv, basketball. Lemaisa, they treat him as if it was two people. Mapki mamoina apume, right? In other words, they would really take money out of, they extract money out of one side. Why? He's like two people. For us, he's like two people. We Jews don't have such a thing. Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Zatzal, couldn't be made as one person. Yeah, not even the Goyim of Vilna and not the Baal Shem Tov. Yeah. In other words, those Goyim decided, of course, we judge only with two people of testimony. He's like two. He's so good. He's like two people. He's the most honest person in America. So now there's a question. One end, you can say, don't testify. They see you as what? As a choshev guy like two, but halachically what they're doing is wrong. So don't give edus to a system that does not work with halacha at all. Not only the goyish, by the way, of course, you shouldn't go to goyish court, but here you have no choice. If you have a tvi against your friend, you're not allowed to go to chiloni court. Here, he was dragged into court by Tim, who's owed money. Or maybe, because he's an important person, right? He cannot get away with it. He can't make excuses. You know, I have a busy day at work. He's a choshev guy. All the news know about him. Maybe he really should be made. You know, should be made again to avoid trouble with the goyim. because the goy would not accept no for an answer. You can be made like two people, and we know you know something. You got to go to court. So maybe really in that case, to avoid trouble, you should go to Beis Din, teku. Remains as a teku. What should you do? Local Orthodox rabbi. Amavashi. And when we get to the Mishnah, I'll be very nice and allow you to ask, even though even that will be Amavashi. Hi Barisol de Zabin li Ara leOvid Kochovim. A person sold a piece of land to a goy, a real bad goy, Ovid Kochovim, that does avodah zarah. Even worse than that, he cooks bacon all day long, and he can smell the bacon. Amatzah de bar isol chavrei. In other words, that was a nice Haredi neighborhood. All the neighbors are Haredi, and now he sold the apartment to a goy over the Zara. Mazel tov, family Chechenchko moved in with a nice cross on the door and with loud goyish music. And the wife, surprisingly, doesn't wear a shawl. I don't know why, but she doesn't. I don't know why. But she's not wearing exactly a long skirt. A guy, real of the Zara, Gila highest family, moved into the neighborhoods right next to me. By the way, I'm making it more interesting, but even if you don't have all these issues, even if we're talking about a field where they only work in the field and nothing else, even then there is a question. So here we say, Mishamtinan lei. Wow. We put cherem, shamta on the seller. If you sold to a goyish person right next to a Jewish person, and the previous person was a Jew who lived there before, you got a good price from the Ovid of the Zara, then we put the seller on cherem and shamta. My time. Why is that? What's the problem? Inema, if you want to tell me, Mishum Dina DeMalchusa, maybe it's because of Dina DeMalchusa. What's Dina DeMalchusa? Dina DeMalchusa means that we saw in Bava Basra, and also in, I think here, Balmatza means if I have a field and you want to sell the field next to me, I, the neighbor, should be your number one customer. You should try and sell it to me before anybody else. So why are you selling it? Forget about goy or a Jew. Why didn't you sell the field to me? I want to have a big field. Or there's, by the way, regarding an apartment, there's a mechloikis, a poiskim in Shulchan Aruch, whether Balmatza applies to apartments or not. People use it all the time. It's not so simple. By field, you have to work the field. I don't want to just have 1 acre of apples. I want 2 acres of apples, all in one go. But when it comes to apartments or even flats, there's a mechloikis whether one flat adjacent to the other is bar matzah or not. Yeah, it's shot. It's mechloikis I've seen inside. So now, if it's bar matzah, listen to this. Bar mamar, zabin me'akum v'zabin le'akum lekam shum dinat bar matzah. Wow. Let's say a person bought from an akum. A person bought from a goy, and now he gets an angry knock. Instead of welcome to our building, gets an angry knock and says, why did you buy it from a neighbor, Mackenzie? It's the opposite case. Mackenzie was my next door neighbor. Baruch Hashem, he left, and he sold it to who? To a nice Hasidic fellow, Chaim Yankel. I come to Chaim Yankel and says, Chutzpan, why did you buy it from Mackenzie? I want to be the one because I want to have a big flat or a big field. He says, what do you mean? Say thank you, then Mackenzie is out, and I'm in. I'm still improving your matzav. You don't have an akum next to you. You have a Jew next to you. Maybe it's not ideal for you. Still an upgrade. So be quiet and welcome me nicely and bring me a cake. The Zabin le'akum, our case, Chaim Yankel was the next field owner and he sold it to Mackenzie. Le'kam shumdina de matzah. There's no problem with matzah. Why? I looked yesterday in the Gemara in Bava Metzia. The Gemara says very simply. Funnily enough, unlike what I said, and what most people think, what the Gemara at least here says, is the Balmatzah is not a din on the seller, it's a din on the buyer. Which means if you buy a field, you should make sure that the other person, the neighbor, was given the first opportunity first. By a goy, you can't demand it. He's a goy. He doesn't work with our laws anyways. Can't expect him that much. Mackenzie would say, that's a nice field for me. The next door neighbor, who cares about him? Yeah, I'll bring him a kosher cake from a kosher bakery. You don't expect that from a goy. If so, what's the problem? So if Chaim Yankel sold Mackenzie the next door apartment or field, why is Chaim Yankel in a curse, in Shamta, and Cherem? What we said before, what I hinted to before is what we say. You bought a lion, you kilu made the lion crouch next to my border. I don't need, that guy to be next to me and cause me trouble all day long. I have like a roaring lion causing me trouble all the time, right next to my border, to my mitzvah. So what do we do? Mishamtin alei. How does the cherem help? You put him in cherem, and what? By the way, cherem is not a punishment. Cherem is always means of pressure until he does something. Until what? We put Reuven, the seller, Chaim, the seller, who sold Mackenzie, who was the bad guy of Edazara, Princess, I don't know, the guy mafioso, smoke coming out of his house all day long. Only if you makabel any possible nezek that comes from Mackenzie and you have to pay for it. We're talking about monetary nezikin. In other words, he may cause you monetary issues. We're not talking now about the spiritual aspect, yeah, but the monetary issues of Mackenzie, I cannot take him to Beis Din. He's not going to listen. So Mimela, you, the seller, you have to accept that any damage caused from the guy, you'll have to pay for that, and you have to sign it based in Eidim Kiyum properly. And if you don't do that and you're serious about it, then we'll put you in Chemer until you do that. I would really, really like to continue, but I'm being very nice, and I'm hearing now 2 questions, and that's it. Yeah, you can choose. Now we have to. Says the Mishnah. We'll just read the Mishnah once, and tomorrow, Meretz Hashem, we'll elaborate more in the Gemara. Notlu moichsin. We decided moichsin. Let's assume the moichsin are ganovim. These are moichsin who work not exactly with the law. They're self-appointed, or these moichsim are what? They take too much. They're too greedy. They take more tax than they're supposed to. Not, in other words, bituach leumi. Not moichsin es chamoiroi. The moichsim took his donkey. But they're being very magnanimous. From some reason, they gave him another chamor, maybe cheaper. They traded. They gave him a chamor from their stolen goods, and they, in change, they took his chamor, and in lieu of that, they gave him another donkey instead. So nice of them. Not listim es ksusoi. Another example, and we're going to see why I need 2 examples, but that's not for now. Listim are mamish robbers, mamish highwaymen with a thing on their face. No, the real robbers. Not listim es ksusoi. The listim took his jacket away, but not ksus, and instead they gave him another jacket, a nicer, Gucci suit from their loot. Yeah, he's allowed to keep those stolen goods. Why? Since we're talking here about Yush, there was Yush already where Yush in the hands of the Gazlan or the Moiches. Who is going to fight the Moiches? Who is going to fight the Gazlan? Nobody. Because we assume that the Bailim were Miyash and there was Shinei Rashus. Again, I'm not saying the guy's a tzaddik for taking it, but there was no choice. They took my donkey. I needed another donkey in the middle of the way. So Lamaisa, once the donkey in his hand, it's fine. Why? There was Yush and Shinei Rashus that he was sort of forced to do. Now it's kosher. It's been through the laundry, right? There was Gzela by them, Yush of the Bailim, and the new Rashus now. So now the donkey is kosher to stay in his hands. Next case, Amatzil mina nohar. That's all different case. There are no people involved. A person salvaged someone's object from the river. The river actually was flowing, mindering away, and then somebody lost an object at the top of the river, at the mouth of the beginning of the river, at the spring, and now it goes all the way to another part of town, another part of the country, and I found someone else's Aveda from the north, and I saved it from him. In other words, if not for me, the Nar would have taken it away to the sea. He wouldn't have found it. I saved it for him. Oimina guys, or let's say from the soldiers that took it away from him. Oimina listin. In other words, I was a brave guy. I'm Mr. Robin Hood. I actually saved his money either from some kind of natural catastrophe or from the soldiers. Oimina listin, from the robbers. Then we say depends. Forget now about the river. That's a different story. Let's focus right now on the listing. Let's say we know that the Bailim actually were Miyash, and it said Bailim Chesron Kis. I overheard the Bailim saying, "Oh, the robbers came. I'll never see it again. I gave up on seeing it. Then it's mine." Why? There was Yush, there was Kinin Gzela, Yush, and now it's a Shinei Rashus. Question is, the Rashi asks, and the Gemara asks also, obviously, yeah. The question is, if you notice, there's a contradiction here. Why? In the first case, we had listim, and then we say any listim, we assume, even without knowing, we assume that it was Miyash. Go ahead and take it. Here we say no. Here we say only if you heard, you got a WhatsApp message, or you heard and you know that that person who was stolen from could be even 1 kilometer away, but you heard his voice, "Oh, I was Miyash." then you can take it. Meaning we don't assume there was Jeiwsh. It's only if we know there was Jeiwsh. While in the ratio, we said we always assume there's Jeiwsh. Get the question? Do we always assume that the person stolen from by listim is miyash, or do we actually have to find out and know about it? Answers the Gemara. I'm giving you a bit of a peep to the next thing, a spoiler, and that is depends what kind of listim. Some listim are so bad you for sure miyash. Some listim you may have hope, and then only if I really know it was miyash, then I can take it further. One more line, and then I think I'll stop. It's the end. It's time. A swarm of bees. Bees are worth money. They can produce honey. So let's say there is a nochil shadvarim, a swarm of bees that came to my field from someone else's field far away. If they were miyash, I overheard with my phone. I heard the other guy from the other field miyash from it, then it's mine. Really, those cases are nogea also to shavas aveda. Nobody stole it, right? It's like aveda with Jeiwsh. Anybody who learned Eilum Mitzias, like Baruch and many of us, what once is Jeiwsh, you can keep it to yourself. It's lost from him. There's no theft involved. We're up to the middle of the Mishnah, the first wide line. And what do we have tomorrow? Tomorrow is Thursday. I don't believe it's the end of the week. And we should have our siyum in about less than 2 weeks from now. I would like this siyum to be, if you don't mind, I think this siyum deserves more than Bava Kama, a big masechta. I would like to have a siyum of not going to the Waldorf Astoria, but I'm saying this online on purpose. I'd like this year to be like we had last time. The siyum could be like a small meal. Everyone brings something and like a proper seuda for us. Maybe you can also have Ezras Noshim, maybe also, we'll see. And I think it deserves more than just, herring and a cake. And if anybody's interested in arranging the siyum, I'll be very, very happy to, if somebody would come up to me and say is interested in arranging, doesn't mean do everything on your own. If Mr. Ployny can arrange everything and make sure that each one brings something, it's not like, organizing the world's event. I will not organize the siyum, I'm sorry. Although I don't do anything all day long, I sit by the fireplace and I read the New York Times all day long. But from some reason, I don't have time for that. So thank you very much and have a great day. And I really, really thank you for listening to the shiur. And I can even hear your questions now. Thank you very much. Yeah, more questions.